Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com.
Our guest tonight is Keystone Party candidate for Governor Joe Soloski. Joe, why are you seeking this office?
Well, thank you for having me, Francine, and I appreciate that great question. I'm seeking this office as the Keystone candidate for Pennsylvania governor because myself and the rest of the people in my party, we want to see significant reforms made to government. There's so many problems. Everybody's got a gripe about government, and it rests very clearly on the shoulders of the Republicans and Democrats. And those two parties do so much to keep third-party additional voices out of the mix. We're here to change that. We not only want to see Keystone get a great foothold and be one of those voices at the table, but we would also like to support other third parties. When that happens, we make government better, and we are able to hold the Republicans and Democrats' feet to the fire, make them more accountable.
Welcome to the PCN Call-In Program. I'm Francine Schertzer, and for the next hour, Keystone Party candidate for Governor Joe Soloski is here to take your calls. Our toll-free number is 1-877-PA6-5001. Once again, 1-877-PA6-5001. You can begin dialing now. We'll be taking your call shortly. Joe, once again, thank you for joining us this evening.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're a member of the Keystone Party. This is a new political party. For those that are unfamiliar,
Yes.
Can you explain some of the basic principles of the party and what distinguishes it from the more traditional Democratic or Republican parties?
Most definitely. The Republican and Democrat parties, they tend to govern together, and they've been in power for 165 years, virtually exclusively. Keystone looks to change that. We are all about government reform. There's so many problems in government today. And like I said a few moments ago, everybody's got a gripe or two about government. If we can come to the table, we can be that additional voice that's going to help make the Republicans and Democrats more accountable, more transparent, better actual representatives for their constituents. But we want to be that too. We want to break that two-party system, as I said, reform government, and we're very, very, I like to think, solutions-oriented. We don't just want to stick with rhetoric. We want to actually put out simple, straightforward, common-sense solutions to the problems we have in government today.
Now, you've previously run for public office as a Libertarian candidate. Have you ever previously been involved or affiliated with either Republican or Democratic parties?
I was a Republican for 40 years, and I was a Republican because, well, I joined when I was very young. And as I started to grow older, I thought it was the most, liberty-minded party of the bunch. And every year they disappointed me. And I probably gave them too many chances. I hung in there thinking sooner or later they were going to come to their senses. But 2016 was the breaking point. When I saw President, at that point, Donald Trump was the imminent nominee, I thought, I got to get off this train. It's a train wreck. It's going to crash and burn. So I jumped off. And best way I would say it is I remember when Ronald Reagan talked about leaving the Democrat Party. His famous comment was, I didn't leave the Democrats. They left me. Well, same for me. Same for me with the Republicans. Their principles, they did not follow through on. And now I can say the same about the Libertarians. I was with them for 6 years, and they seemed to be a perfect fit. I really enjoyed them, made a lot of friends there, ran for office. But similarly to the Republicans, they got away from their principles. They got away from what made them unique and at the time pretty wonderful. But they've strayed too far from that, and I could not carry their banner anymore. Hence, we've got the Keystone Party. Pick up the reins and make something happen.
Tell us a little bit about the experience that you would bring to the governor's office.
Well, I have financial background all my life. I'm a certified public accountant. I operated my own independent accounting practice for over 30 years, and I'm now retired from that. But as an accountant, you're always looking to attract new clients, new customers. But at the same time, for those clients, you're looking for efficiencies. You're looking to save money. You're looking to maximize profits. I would bring the same to government. Now, this state government, I mean, Pennsylvania's budget has more than doubled in just 20 years. I would be looking to slash that budget dramatically by at least 5% a year. And I'll be doing it by leading from the top. I think starting this January, Governor of Pennsylvania is slated to make $215,000 a year. Can you imagine? Plus, we have the highest paid legislature in the state. So I will be slashing my pay by more than 65%, down to just under $70,000. And all of a sudden, that'll make Pennsylvania the lowest paid governorship in the nation. And once I do that, I can now lead by example. I can go to the legislature and say, it's your turn. Let's make some cuts here, some massive cuts. And I can look at each department and chip away at what's been bloated, especially for the last 20 years.
Now, as you were just talking a little bit about your desire to cut state spending by 5% on an annual basis,
Yes.
What specific programs or agencies would you like to see cut first?
Oh, my heavens. Where do you start? I mean, I look at 5% and I just look at the overall total. The fact that it has ballooned more than 100% in a mere 20 years. And if we don't stop it, I guarantee you it's going to be over a $60 billion state budget within 10 years. But I look at things like, for example, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. There's cuts that can be made there. That can be made unbelievably more efficient. I would like to de-toll the Turnpike. I could look at transportation. You know, I can look at so many things in this state budget. Now, I don't have them in front of me right now, line by line. My budget guy has already isolated over 27% that we can cut. Now, I wouldn't do that all at once. I would do that incrementally, like I say, 5% a year and keep chipping away at this thing. And if the legislature doesn't go along with me, well, all I can say is the veto pen is a very, very powerful instrument. And I will veto any budget that they send to me that does not include at least a 5% cut. It doesn't have to be across the board, but it has to be happening each and every year that I'm in office.
Many major initiatives involve the governor working closely with the legislature to get these projects moved forward. What would your approach be to working with legislators?
It's going to be tough because, let's face it, they're mostly R's and D's, and they're not going to like it. But like I said, the veto pen's a powerful thing. And if I try to stop them in their tracks, sooner or later, they have to cooperate. And I think the people of Pennsylvania are going to appreciate that approach because, my gosh, these guys can't even pass a gift ban, which I call the bribe ban. There's literally millions of dollars. And these guys are going to make $100,000 a year individually, minimum, starting this January, $100,000. Plus, there are literally millions of dollars in gifts that they don't even have to account for. So I want to see a complete gift ban, allowing for nothing more than what I would call de minimis gifts, something like, you know, if an elementary school class wants to hand a politician a little plaque for a thank you for appearing at their class, fine, that's de minimis. I can get along with that. But that's not a trip to the Bahamas. That's not sporting game tickets. That's not excessive meals, things like that. I will be pushing that constantly. And I know they're not going to particularly care for it, but I'm not here to win a popularity contest. I'm here to fundamentally change Pennsylvania government.
If elected, what would your top priority be?
Well, as I said right off the top, slash this state budget. If we start doing that, we can then give our residents significant tax relief. We have the second highest gas tax in the country. We can slash that. Our property tax system is archaic, outdated, antiquated. Call it what you like. The property tax system is the worst. I want to completely throw it out and replace it with regional sales taxes that are more competitive. I could go on and on. There are so many things. Detolling the turnpike, as I mentioned, ending government prohibitions. Government prohibitions don't work. And usually government only ends them when they see they can make money from them. You know, case in point, all of a sudden it's very, very fashionable to be legalizing marijuana usage. Personally, I'm for just decriminalizing it. You should be able to grow your own. And government shouldn't be involved. You want to pass along a little sales tax? Fine, fine. But And there certainly has to be some regulation to keep that product safe. I go along with that. But for the most part, government only wants to get into it because they see huge dollar signs in front of their eyes. And I want to make sure that that's prevented. What else could I go with? Oh, my heavens. Selling the state store system. There's a big one. Why in the world is this state basically monopolizing the wholesale distribution and retail sales of alcohol and spirits in this state? I think only we in Iowa may still do that. Maybe Utah. Well, there's only one other state that does it completely like we do. I would sell the state store system and make sure it goes into private hands. So there's a quick few.
Let's take our first call of the evening. Once again, our toll-free number is 1-877-PA6-5001. Right now we go to Lancaster to hear from Jay. Go ahead, please.
Hello, folks. Love this show. This guy, he's great. But the only problem is he's going to take the votes away from the Republicans. And then we're going to end up with the Democratic Socialist Party. And that's my question and my comment. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much for that question. May I continue, Francine?
Please. Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, the gentleman's question is, I appreciate it, and it's very thoughtful. Here's how I look at it. Nobody owns your vote. We are supposed to be voting for the best candidate. You are supposed to be voting for your principles. And when somebody says, oh, you're just going to be taking votes away from this party or that party, that implies that one or both of those parties already owns your vote. Listen to that. They already own your vote. No, that is not how our constitutional republic in this country works. It's not how the state of Pennsylvania works. You are entitled to vote for the candidate of your choice. Now, I don't care if that's simply a protest vote. Good for you. You are voting your principles. And the more that we get third parties involved and people voting for third parties, the more we're going to be able to finally tip this balance where we're going to have much better government because everything's going to be much more accountable. We'll be able to hold their feet to the fire.
For all 8 state budgets, Governor Tom Wolf had attempted to raise the state's minimum wage. What is your view on minimum wage in Pennsylvania?
I think the minimum wage should be 0. And here's why. Wage controls and price controls historically have always been found to never work. I honestly believe the minimum wage holds wages down. It reduces them because some people feel, well, if I pay this, I'm legal. But you look at so many employers I know around my town here in State College, and I'm sure throughout the state, they're paying in excess of minimum wage. And for a lot of these jobs, technically, they wouldn't have to. When you leave it in the employer's hands, guess what? Wages are going to go up because those employers are competing for those best employees. They're going to train them better. They're going to pay them higher. There's going to be additional benefits for those employees through that employment. So if you take away that price control, and that's what a minimum wage is, you're actually going to see wages go up. It sounds counterintuitive. It's exactly how it's going to work.
On your website, you say that you'd like to get Pennsylvania back on track following the coronavirus pandemic. What specific policies would you change or enact?
Well, the biggest one has already been enacted. Thank heavens and hats off to Pennsylvania voters. Last year, primary 2021, you passed a constitutional amendment limiting the governor's emergency powers. And I had been beating that drum since my campaign started back in 2020. And they did it exactly the way I wanted it. Those powers are now limited to 21 days. Great. There's places where that is needed. There's a natural disaster in Pennsylvania. Those emergency powers are needed to assist communities. But to shut down businesses arbitrarily and almost universally, like Governor Wolf did, that only hurt our economy. And I wanted to make sure that never happened again. Thankfully, the voters of Pennsylvania passed that amendment, and they basically accomplished my biggest goal on that list. I will just expand it a little bit further. If this ever happens again when I'm governor, you will not see me exercise, even for 21 days, my powers that are constitutionally there to shut down businesses even for 21 days. I will not do that.
You write that you want to make sure to protect the workers' compensation fund. Why is this specifically an area of concern?
The reason is, about a year ago, there was discussion by the Wolf administration to basically raid the workers' compensation fund to provide business grants for businesses that needed help, especially coming off the pandemic. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Well, here's the problem. They did this 20 years ago with the state employees' pension plan and the teachers' pension plan. That was an extremely solvent plan. It had It had a $7 billion surplus back around 2002, and it was going to be paying its participants benefits for as far as the eye could see. But then the legislature got its hands on it, and it quickly went to a $50 billion deficit, and it is much higher than that right now. I know from that experience alone, they'll do exactly the same thing with the workers' compensation fund, and I will never let them do that when I'm governor. That fund is paid for by premiums from employers, and that's a very healthy fund. It's in great shape. Why would we want to fool with that? But to say, hey, we're going to rate it and divvy out a little bit to businesses, no, that never works. The government always ends up getting the biggest cut, and that fund will be a disaster within 24 months.
You've also said that you'd like to eliminate professional licensing fees. Why?
Well, to Governor Wolf's credit, I'm not a big fan of Governor Wolf, but to his credit, he has eliminated several professional license fees, and I think that's a good thing. A person like myself can become a CPA. Another person can become a hairdresser, a barber. All of these professions are licensed here in Pennsylvania, and I don't think that's right. Here we are, we go and we get specialized training to enter a profession and make a living. And all of a sudden, what does the state do? It has effectively seized our right to work in that profession, and it sells it back to us in the form of a license every year or two. That's just a backdoor tax. And my thought is each individual profession, their own professional organizations, should be doing that policing. The state shouldn't be issuing licenses for something I've already got the training to do. So I would eliminate all of them because, again, just like the state store system, there's no place for the state of Pennsylvania to have a hand in occupational licensing.
What programs or efforts are funded by these professional licensing fees, and how would you propose to replace those funds?
I cannot give you a quick list of what programs are funded by them. I look at my own profession, public accountancy. I can't think ever of a single program the state of Pennsylvania put out there to the benefit of certified public accountants ever in my 30 plus years. So I'd be willing to bet that for most professions, the programs offered are none. The state's just getting a piece of the action, like I said, as a backdoor tax.
You've also said you'd like to eliminate the personal income tax. How would you replace the revenue brought in by this tax? This is a pretty significant contributor of the general fund.
It is. But again, keep in mind that general fund has gone from 20 billion just 20 years ago to about 42 billion now. I understand some costs are going up in that period of time, of course, but our state is always looking for just more revenue streams to keep bloating itself. Where would I do it? First things first, I'm cutting that spending. I'm pulling that budget down. If I'm pulling that budget down 5% a year, I'm not going to need that 3+% personal income tax. And I emphatically point out to people that business-friendly states don't have income taxes. You look at Tennessee, you look at Florida, Texas. Businesses flock there because of the positive tax structure. And I want to make sure Pennsylvania is in the same competitive boat. We do okay. When you look at where we are economically, look at certain surveys and rankings, We typically land right around number 30 of the 50 states, depending on the category. We could do so much better. And we've been able to accomplish that in spite of government. Imagine if government decided to get off the backs, get out of the way. You're going to see this state flourish like it hasn't in probably decades and decades. So that's how I would fund it. I would cut the budget, cut spending dramatically so that I can pull that taxation.
The issue of property tax, either elimination or reduction, has been a perennial issue in the legislature probably for decades now. What would you support?
Yes. Well, I have been very clear, and I want to just get rid of the property tax system. Again, as a CPA, I've seen a lot of tax systems in my lifetime. Property tax system has got to be the worst. It's the most archaic. It's the most unfair and unjust. People lose their homes, especially late in life. People lose their business properties because they can't pay those taxes. Once again, people are buying property, working hard, and owning that property, only to have to rent them from the government via property taxes for the rest of their lives. And I've run into people who have lost their homes and businesses, as I've said. So what we need to do is get rid of it, just tank it, get it out of the way, and replace it with local, regional, or county sales taxes. Now, I want to point out very quickly when I say that, no tax is great. I mean, I've never seen one I've liked. That being said, sales tax is the best of the bunch, just because there's an element of competition involved and there's an element of choice involved. You know, if I'm sitting here in Center County and we've now added some new sales tax by law to fund our school systems here, that's great. That's great. Now, let's say I go right next door to Clearfield County, and maybe their tax system is a little bit different to fund their schools. These two counties, and actually every county in the state, but in this case, those two counties are now competing against each other. They're competing for the best teachers, competing to put out the best education, and they're competing to draw residents to their individual counties. Now, from the individual consumer viewpoint, now you get choices. Am I going to buy this in Center County? Am I going to buy this car in Clearfield County? Am I going to settle here because of this tax system? There's that competition, both in the delivery of the education product and in the consumerism of the individual residents. This is powerful stuff. And you eliminate property taxes. There's your cut, significant cut. Replace it with a competitive sales tax. Everybody's going to come out of this winning.
Let's take another phone call. This one from Clearfield now. Robert, you have the floor.
Okay, hi. So good evening, candidate. Candidate, to be honest, with all due respect, your views and proposals makes Doug Mastriano look like Averill Harriman. We saw this before with Tom Corbett. He cut taxes cut spend at the local level or state level, and mandated services, funding mandated services, just got passed down to the local. No real difference. Now, you talk about Center County and Clearfield County. Center County has that massive growth in revenue generated called Penn State University. Clearfield County has nothing. And so he said, you try to localize it. The wealthy areas are going to do fine. The poor areas like Clearfield County, where there's nothing there, just one great big backfilled strip mine, that's all there is left to it, is really going to suffer when it comes to providing basic services. So like I say, with all due respect, sir, you sound to me like Tom Corbett 2.0. So that's my position. That's my point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate your point of view. I could say a couple of things, but when you look at property taxes right now, exactly what you're saying is what's prevailing. You may have a higher tax base and a higher property taxation in Center County because of the vibrant economy here. And who wouldn't want that job generator called Penn State University? Similarly, Clearfield County may have a much more reasonable property tax cost system just for the reasons you stated. So what you're talking about already exists. When I look at replacing it with sales taxes, though, now there's this wonderful element of competition. And this is where the less economically advantaged counties get a break. They can position themselves to attract more businesses, more jobs to their counties, just because their tax structure is going to be so much more attractive. So I will take issue with you on the Tom Corbett parallel, because there was a lot more going on there at that time, coming off the Rendell administration. But on the fiscal matters you just mentioned, I see some great parallels, and I actually think you just made my point. So thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about school funding for just a moment and how you'd like to see it distributed, whether you'd prefer to see a greater emphasis on the public school system or whether you'd be open to alternative options such as vouchers.
Almost definitely every possible choice. One of the things that former Governor Gary Johnson proved in New Mexico when he was governor there was that vouchers work. And I want to see every possibility available to parents in Pennsylvania. There's a place for the public school system. When people say we ought to get rid of it, I say, wait a minute. No, I think we ought to perfect it. But I think charter schools, cyber schools, these are elements that parents need to have at their disposal. And I sometimes talk about this. Can you imagine an economically distressed community that decides to purchase a building that maybe used to be a closed school, and they decide to attract teachers, make that a community school, and it could end up being not only a phenomenally vibrant school with local support, but I could imagine that becoming their civic center for their community, which could tremendously help reinvigorate that economically distressed community. There's all sorts of pictures you could draw here with economic development going along with education development.
We will continue our discussion with Keystone Party candidate Joe Soloski in just a moment. But first, I'd like to give our guests a brief break and tell you about some upcoming programming here on PCN. Tonight on The Issue Speaks with Chris DeLuzio. He's a Democrat running for Pennsylvania's 17th congressional district in southwestern Pennsylvania. That airs tonight at 8 o'clock. On our next call-in program, we'll talk about the race for governor. Larry Seisler, founder of Seisler Media and Issues Advocacy, and Dom Giordano, host for Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. They will be our guests Tuesday night live at 7 o'clock. Stay up to date on election 2022 with PCN. Watch debates, candidate interviews, and more on demand for free at pcntv.com/election. And please take a moment to thank your local cable system for carrying PCN. They carry us on their channel lineup as a public service. We receive no state or federal tax dollars. And just a reminder, we continue to take your calls this evening. Our toll-free number is 1-877-PA6-5001. Now, Joe, let's get back to the discussion. Early on in the program, you talked about favoring privatizing the state liquor store system. What are your reasons?
Yes. Well, I look at it as a function that government has no reason to be in. This is a private sector product. And it's just like if I want to go to the store and buy a necktie, why in the world would the state be selling neckties? The same goes with distilled spirits. I look at this as something very archaic that is still with us since the 1930s. If I'm not mistaken, that may have come down under Governor Pinchot back then. And when you look at it, hey, Prohibition ended 90 years ago. And when you also look at where we stand today, there are independent outlets that are now starting to sell wine, starting to sell beer. I'm even seeing a few, mini marts that handle a little bit of whiskey. Well, if they can do it there, and why are they doing it? They're doing it because they found a loophole in the state law that allows them to do it. Now, if it can be done right now through that loophole, it can be done across the board. I think we'll have better choices in that product line if we go private. We'll have, again, more competition locally. Oh, you may have 3, 4, 5 different estate stores within your residence radius, but chances are they're carrying, for the most part, the same products. I'd like to see that expanded, but like I say, it is primarily a function. It should not be in the government's hands. It is a private sector function.
Let's talk just briefly. There are proposals in the state legislature currently to tax and legalize recreational marijuana. What are your views on drug policy?
Oh, I like the approach that Portugal has had great success with for the last 20 years. Portugal decided to shift from the war on drugs like we have here in the United States, where it's approached from a criminal perspective, and they decided to approach it from a medical perspective. And they have had stark raving successes. Over those 20 years, all of the major indicators like addiction rates, HIV-related infections and such, they've all crashed through the floor. They've dropped 75% or more. That is a real-time, real-life study with great results, and we could have the same happen here in the United States. I'd love to see Pennsylvania be the prime pilot project for it in the United States. Now, if you approach it as a medical, from a medical point of view, you're helping people with their addictions. You are making sure that product, now decriminalized, I didn't say legalized, I said decriminalized, that product is safe because you can regulate purity. I like that. I mean, look at the people that are having trouble with fentanyl. If you can regulate that product's purity, at least now the product is safer. Also, if you approach it from a medical perspective, we are no longer filling our prisons with people that are being arrested for holding onto a plant. If I was to hold up a flower pot right now and I could say, well, isn't this a beautiful geranium? No one's arresting me. But if I hold up a flower pot with marijuana in it, I can be arrested for possession. It's pretty ludicrous when you think about it. A lot of people talk to me about, well, what about the morality of it all, Joe? And I say, wait a minute. You need to take morality and set it aside if you're going to be discussing these issues. Not that morality is not important, but set it aside so that we can discuss these issues thoughtfully. Because let's face it also, government has never been able to legislate morality, ever. You saw it with alcohol. You've seen it now with drugs. How about gambling? I can remember just 30 years ago, people saying, oh, you'll never see table games come to Pennsylvania. We're number 2 in the nation now, just behind Nevada. And why did they do it? Well, the state saw a revenue stream. And that's exactly why they now finally want to see recreational marijuana legalized. I'm for full decriminalization. So that's where I stand. I like the Portuguese model. People sometimes criticize me when I say that. They say, oh, that's just Portugal. That's not the United States. I'm like, come on. You're right. It's a much smaller country, but look at the success they had there. We can have that success almost exponentially here in the United States. So that's where I stand, full decriminalization.
Let's take another phone call off to Newcastle now. George, you're on PCN.
Hello, Joe. Do you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, George. Right. Thanks for calling.
You was talking about property tax. It's killing the seniors and everybody else, too.
Absolutely.
You pay all your life for your home. You get it paid off, and if you don't pay the taxes, they can take your home away from you.
Absolutely.
And another problem is these nursing homes, too. It's crazy what they want anymore. They could take your home, too. Something's got to give. Got to be changed. I've been moaning about this for many a times, and nothing gets done. It just gets kicked down the road. That SB 76. I'll hang the phone up there, Joe, and listen and see what you have to say.
Well, George, thank you very, very much, sir. I appreciate your comments, your thoughts. Thank you. Yes, on property tax, you heard everything I had to say, and I would like to see it completely abolished. It is a tax system that we've completely outgrown, and like I say, it is unjust, unfair, completely archaic. When it comes to nursing homes, wow, you're talking about the medical profession, you're talking about the care profession, you're talking about the insurance profession. There's a lot of moving parts involved here, and I got news for you. You already know it. It's extremely complex. I ran into this year just trying to get a replacement CPAP machine, and the red tape you run through just to buy that medical device is astounding. I would be doing everything I can to try to streamline those processes and make them more simple. I wish I could state at this moment exactly what I would do, but I have to say this, and I'm going to apologize to you, George, and any other listener. We politicians, and dang, it's tough for me to say that that's what I am, but I guess I am since I'm running for office. We don't know everything, and we're fools if we try to look like we do. When somebody brings an issue to me, let's say it was the nursing home industry and the costs associated with it, I'll be the first to say, I'm no expert. I know those costs are tough. I've seen people hit with them, but all the nuances, I am not going to sit here and try to say I have all the answers. Will I research it? Will I want to have a conversation with you and get back to you? Absolutely. But I tell you what, with all due respect, where I don't have all the answers, I'll be asking you, the questioner, to enlighten me. Thank you.
Let's take another phone call now from Altoona. Nancy, it's your turn.
I'm calling regarding the legalization of marijuana for the use, just not for the medical. I agree on the medical. But the reason I am against it is I don't believe we should do anything along that line until we have a way to detect it for drivers, because we don't have a breathalyzer, a kind of thing to know who has smoked marijuana all day or even enough, mixing it with a drink or a beer. The young people, all age people, it wouldn't show if the cop sees them driving erratically. And I know it does change your perception. It's been known in the states of Arizona, higher traffic accidents. I don't believe until we have a test, we will have more problems, and there is enough problems with driving and under the influence and distracted driving. It changes your perception. You don't have the ability to focus like that. And I don't agree until we get the ability to distinguish when you are driving and stopped. Are you high on marijuana? And also that stuff about, like, it's easier for people to not get under the influence of marijuana instead of fentanyl. Well, I'll tell you what, when you grow it and people are selling it and what they're mixing it with, and they can put things in the marijuana to make it more potent, and they do, this is a problem. And I grew up in the 60s, and I must say, I know it changes your perception, and you would not be good for driving, and it should not be legalized for recreational use. Now,
well, I think that, thank you, Nancy, first of all. Great question. And I agree with you. I think right now there are certain ways they can detect marijuana usage, or at least its presence. But your idea about a test is probably a good one, because it does change a person's mood. It does change a person's perspective. And where it can impair their driving, that has to be enforced, just like drunken driving. Cannot agree with you more. We would be fools if we were not working to keep our highways safe from people who are being irresponsible. Luckily, I think that this can be solved. I have great confidence in science, in development. Do I think a test, simple, easy, cost-effective test, can be devised? I do. And I think as we get to this point, and it may take actually decriminalizing recreational marijuana for that testing to actually follow. It's one of those chicken and egg things. I don't know which happens first, but I am confident we'll be able to have that test.
What policies would you support to reduce gun violence?
Well, I am pretty straightforward about where I stand on Second Amendment rights, the ability to defend yourself. I am a complete supporter of our Second Amendment. I think every person has the right to defend themselves and their families. And every time we try to pass gun laws to restrict our ability to do that, we all lose, because criminals don't follow those laws. And we tax, law-abiding citizens, we're the ones that suffer. Now, what we have seen recently in the news is the best thing to defend against a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And where people are adequately trained, carrying, we have a better chance of survival everywhere we go, because it's going to make criminals pause before they try to take advantage of anyone. I would also like to see, for example, I have a concealed carry permit. It's not particularly expensive, and I have to renew it every 5 years. Again, that's like professional licensing. It is a backdoor tax, and I don't think it is even necessary. It's outdated. There's no need for it. The state is getting an extra $20 per person every time they're renewing that license. And there's a lot of them in this state. So if we can focus on adequate training, handgun training, firearm training, so that people can best protect themselves without harm to anyone else, that's going to bring down gun violence, because a good guy with a gun is always going to prevail over a bad guy with a gun.
With Roe v. Wade being overturned over the summer with the Dobbs decision, what is your view on access to abortion?
I can be extremely specific on this, and my perspective is a little bit different than my opponents. I believe government should have no hand in either the promotion or the prohibition of abortion. Now, hear me when I say that. Government shouldn't be involved in promoting it or prohibiting it. I am saying that as a lifelong pro-life guy. There's nothing I would like to see more than 0 abortions. But I know what reality is. That's never going to happen. There are situations, many, where a woman's life truly is in danger. And in that situation, that is a call that is to be made between a woman and her doctor, between a woman and her God. It's none of my business. And for me to assert how I feel on somebody else and their body, it just goes against everything I believe in. So there's the best way I could put it out to you. The government shouldn't have a hand in it. And every time they try, again, when they prohibit it, one of my opponents wants a full ban on abortions. He's saying that from a position that's well intended, but it is going to fail miserably, and it will never prevent even one abortion. That's the sad part. It will only make abortion more dangerous, and it will create a new criminal class called pregnant women who have gotten abortions. He'll want to send them off to jail, from what I have been able to read and see. I'm sorry, that's like sending our current people that happen to hold that marijuana plant off to jail. They've hurt no one except holding onto a plant. So now we're going to send mothers to jail? I'm sorry, that my heart is one that's supposed to be empathetic. My job isn't to judge people, it's to love people. So I need to allow women the best choices, and government can do something. Again, Keystone is solution-based. What we want to do, I would like to see pregnancy support services get better support from the government, either directly or from by funding existing nonprofits. And there's many of them out there. But here's another big one. Let's streamline adoption services. The processes are too costly. There's too many hoops to jump through. If we can do those two things, we will minimize abortions to their lowest possible number. They're never going to completely go away. It's just impossible, and let's just admit that. And keeping government out of the process is going to be the best way to go.
Our next call comes from Greensburg. Bill, you're on PCN.
Hello, Joe. I had one question. You ran for governor for the Libertarian Party for about 2 years and then lost the nomination back in March. Why should people vote for somebody who didn't get the nomination from their original party, had to jump to a new competing party, and now is seeking the nomination from a party with 20 members? Is it because you threatened to shoot members of that political party that you were a member of before, prior to their convention?
Wow. Bill, you couldn't be more wrong, my friend. First of all, I never threatened to shoot anyone, ever. I said I am very positive about my Second Amendment stance for people to be able to defend themselves and their families. And they took my stance and turned it around and decided to make it a threat. And that was indicative of the nosedive that the Libertarian Party has taken in the last few years. They are not at all what they used to be, and it's a shame. That 50-year-old party worked very hard to become the third largest party in the country, and now they're just self-destructing from within. Their new leadership is just a sham, and I could have never carried their banner. Yes, I was certainly going after their nomination for a year and a half, but when I saw that new leadership take over, I had no desire to carry that banner. And for me to be able to move forward and work to reform government and stick to my principles, I had to move elsewhere. Just like I left the Republican Party, I got news for you. Leaving the Libertarian Party was not at all difficult.
Another phone call, this one from Brockway. Steve, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My question for the candidate is about the property tax elimination. And
Yes.
And I agree that this property tax is brutal to our aging and older adult population. With that being said, we have three foundational ways of generating income for government, state government: the property tax, the sales tax, the income tax. So my question to the candidate would be, if you take away the property tax or eliminate it, what are you going to do with the other two? And then I'm just going to throw in one other anticipatory question, which I hear a lot from candidates and elected officials. Well, we just need to, take away functions of state government. That's a tough thing to do when people rely on the services of government. So are you going to increase income, sales, or what services are you going to eliminate from state government? Thank you, and I'll hang up and listen.
Again, thank you for that incredible question. Yes, I would like to completely eliminate the property tax system because, as we said, people lose their homes. It is completely unfair. As I said, I would increase sales taxes to replace that, at least in the short run, okay? I want to see state spending cut. So if we cut state spending, we don't have a revenue problem here in Pennsylvania. We have a spending problem. When you look at the fact that we went from 20 billion 20 years ago to 42 billion now, and we're covering it, the revenue's rolling in, and they keep looking for new revenue streams. Okay, if I can cut spending, now I have excess revenue streams. I can get rid of property taxes. And as I keep cutting spending, I can start to pull down those revenue streams, and with it, start to cut down on income taxes. I'm talking both at the corporate level and the personal level, because that's what it's going to take to keep attracting businesses to the state of Pennsylvania.
Now, throughout the program, we've made a couple references to your prior runs for elected office as a Libertarian candidate. What did you learn from those experiences?
A lot. I learned a lot, and I grew a lot. I ran in 2018 for state representative. That was the first time, and I got to tell you, there's moments where you're just downright nervous. You're just getting your feet wet, but it was an absolute thrill. Then in 2020, what a strange year to run for office. Big lockdown, you could barely campaign. I'm running for state treasurer. I pulled about 150,000 votes, just shy. But with that, myself and two other great candidates, Dan Wasmer for U.S. Senate. Oh, no, he was running, for Attorney General. Jen Moore was running for Auditor General. We all gained enough votes to earn minor party status for our party at that time. So that was an absolute thrill. But each step of the way, you just get a little bit more, fine-tuned. And it makes right now running for governor a campaign that I feel very, very comfortable with. I'm comfortable speaking with people. I'm comfortable speaking about issues. I've grown a thick skin out of necessity. But it's all been very, very positive stuff. I've loved the experiences, each one of them, including this one. This one's been phenomenal.
What are the biggest challenges that third-party candidates face when running for office?
They are multiple. Biggest one is just getting attention. I cannot tell you, and let me give you a little context. I was the first candidate in this gubernatorial race, December 5th, 2022, almost 2 years ago. And I did it so that I could get attention and get traction. And I got news for you. It's been tough every step of the way. I've attended candidate events, county fairs, been interviewed. I've gone to every function and forum that I can, trying to meet voters and talk just like this. The media, and that's a very broad umbrella, isn't it? And before I say anything more about it, let me say it is outlets like PCN that do their reporting in an unbiased, nonpartisan manner that is the absolute best. You include third-party candidates, and there are several others like you, thank heavens. But there are many. The classic media outlets don't even reach out. Even when you try to chase them down, they tend to ignore a third party. They just want to do the quick and easy stuff, report about the R's, report about the D's, and those are the only two that get any attention. It is a disservice to the electorate. People deserve to know who their choices are and what those choices are about. And it is tough to get your voice out there, but we keep pounding away. And oftentimes we beat them at their own game. But that is the biggest challenge, is just getting attention, and especially getting the media's attention. I wish the fourth estate would assert itself more. It truly should. It has every right and obligation to do that. It would serve not only myself and other candidates well, but it would serve the entire electorate well.
How do you counteract that and get your message out?
Oh, it's tough. Like I say, you have to go after every opportunity you can find. And as you bring in donations, you have to use that money very well so that you're getting your name out as much as possible, as much coverage. And even then, it is such an uphill battle. When I look at money involved, I mean, if people knew more about me, there would be more money rolling in. I've run a pretty sharp, I think I have slightly more than $10,000 in total campaign expenditures. Whereas last I looked, I don't know, about a week, 10 days ago, Doug Mastriano, his campaign had spent somewhere around $6.5 million. And Josh Shapiro, I noticed, he was up at $48 million. I am sure he is going to eclipse 50, and I don't know where Doug will finish, but mine's been on a shoestring, and that's the problem. If we don't get enough attention and we keep trying to get it, it's tough to bring in the donations and attract those new donors.
What concerns or issues do you hear most when you're on the campaign trail?
A lot of them we've discovered or discussed this evening. I've heard a lot this year about the abortion issue. A lot of people are focusing on that, primarily because of Doug's threatened ban. A year ago, I'll say 2 years ago, it was mostly about the governor's renegade powers and shutting down our economy. Those are the two I've heard the most over these 22 months that I have been running. There's been many others, but those are the two that just bubble to the top the most.
There have been some candidates that question the validity of the 2020 election. What can you do to restore voter confidence in Pennsylvania?
Well, we have to always do all we can to keep those systems secure. And honestly, I think for the most part they are. We have successfully voted before with absolute secrecy and gotten those results properly tallied. We've done it again and again. We've utilized absentee mail-in balloting again and again. So when they talk about this expansion of mail-in balloting, I love it. And here's why. I've had different people recently say to me, "Hey, I got my ballot in the mail, saw your name." Now, what does that do for a person? They can now look at their ballot and log on to their PC and do some research. Who the heck is this guy? Whereas when you step into the voting booth And that's the first time you're seeing these names because the media doesn't cover us. There's no time to research. So now you're making a very reckless vote. And one of the other things, I think we need to do when it comes to improving voting is implementing ranked choice voting. Maine does it, Alaska does it, other countries do it. Ranked choice voting, sometimes called like instant runoff voting, it makes each voter's vote more powerful. You will no longer ever have anybody elected to office with less than 50% of the total vote. Ranked choice voting ensures that. But more importantly, it's going to also broaden the chance for those additional voices at the table, for those third parties to become elected and to serve you better.
Why should voters elect you on November 8th?
Because I'm the best candidate on the ballot. And I'm not saying that arrogantly. I'm saying that with confidence. I'm saying that because Pennsylvania government truly does need to be fundamentally reformed. And I'm the only person talking about it. If people vote for me, they are going to see budget cuts. They're going to see tax cuts. They're going to see businesses moving here in a relatively short 4 to 8 year period. And our economy is going to burst at the seams. I'm absolutely confident about that. Our standard of living will improve if we can remove these government barriers. That's why people should vote for me. May I make a quick pitch about myself and
Sure.
my website? My website is joesoloski.com. That's right, joesoloski.com. And if you go there, you're going to see all the issues that I've been spotlighting throughout my campaign. Please take some time, pull your ballot that you may have just received in the mail, or just go to my website, take a look at those issues, see what resonates with you. I think you're going to find overall, and you're never going to agree 100% with any candidate, but I think if you look at my platform and my issues that are important to me, and I like to think important to you, you're going to find that I'm the candidate that you're going to want to vote for.
Joe Soloski is the Keystone Party candidate for governor. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Francine, thank you. This has truly been an honor and a pleasure.
Coming up next on The Issue Speaks with Chris DeLuzio. He's a Democrat running for Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District in southwestern Pennsylvania. That's up next at 8 o'clock. And if you didn't get a chance to call in and comment during the show, you can post your question or comment on our Facebook page or on Twitter. I'm Francine Schertzer. Thank you for watching.